helicopter arrives above the ship. The pilot urges the man to jump. The motorboat below will be able to catch him, but the man clearly misunderstood. He jumps towards the ship and fell into the sea. But here's the bad luck. There was a shark right next to him. Fortunately, the lifeboat arrived just in time. The shark was about to bite him. The man touched the lifeguard's face. He wasn't sure if it was real. The man works for a magazine publisher. He goes through the same routine every day. At 42, he's still single. He has nothing else to offer, and he's always living out his fantasies. On this day, the man had a problem with a colleague in the elevator. He pushed her out of the elevator. The wall was knocked out by them. They fell through the air into a truck downstairs. It's like they have superpowers, chasing each other down the street, making a mess of the road. Then they were ready to fight, and then they clenched their fists, each trying to leave a mark on the other's face. Just as their fists were about to meet, the man came back to reality. It turned out that what had just happened was all in his head. He had been working for over 10 years. Finally, worked up the courage to say hello to the co-worker he had a crush on. The co-worker is divorced. They went to pick up the woman's son from school. The man is good at skateboarding. He's good with kids. The co-worker is attracted to him. They kiss, and they spend the rest of their lives together. But again, this is a man's fantasy. But in reality, the co-worker says goodbye to him. On that day, the man didn't find the negatives that the photographer had sent for the cover of the magazine. It was the last issue of the magazine. The negatives are very important. He decides to go and find the photographer himself. He went to Greenland first. The locals told him that the photographer had gone on a boat, and that's what happened. The man gets on the boat. The crew tells him that the photographer had left for Iceland a few hours earlier. The man rode his bicycle. He followed the photographer in the direction he had left. The trip is a bit boring. The man looks around. He is amazed by the landscape, rivers, mountains. These beautiful things are unlike anything he's ever seen before. They're wonderful, and the man hasn't been able to experience them for decades. But then his old habits kicked in. There were many birds in the sky, and they all came together, and they became the face of a co-worker the man had a crush on. The man was mesmerized, and the next moment, now he's lost his only means of transportation. He had to walk. Luckily, he met some children. They had traded their toys for a skateboard. The man took off from the top of the mountain on his skateboard, and then he's going down a winding road. It's just great. This time, it's not the scenery that gets him. It was courage and freedom, and his smiles. And when he finally reaches his destination, he saw something crazy. There was a man on an airplane, rushing toward an erupting volcano. The ash was approaching. The man had to get into his car. The scene felt like the end of days. And when he got out, the car was covered in ash. He knew he'd never find a photographer in Iceland. The man went back to his office, but he learned that he'd been fired. He had to find the negative to prove that he had done his job properly. He found a clue and traveled to the Himalayas. With the guidance of the locals, the man set out on a new journey alone. He climbed to the top. It's a dangerous place. The air is thin, the temperature is cold. While he was on the phone, someone behind him shouts at him. The man hands up. He knew that the man in front of him was the photographer he had worked with for more than 10 years, but had never met. They both took off their glasses. The man asked the photographer where the negative was. The photographer said it was in the wallet that had been sent to him, but the man had already thrown the wallet away. He asked the photographer what was in the negative, but the photographer didn't tell him. He just asked him to come down for a soccer game. Sunset, on a snowy mountain. Some people were playing soccer freely. At that moment, each of them could forget his troubles for a while. When they returned home, the mother gave the man the wallet she found in the garbage. He gave the negatives to the company, but he didn't look at the negatives himself. A few days later, he met a female colleague on the street. He talked quietly with her. They passed a newsstand. They wanted to see the cover of the latest issue. They didn't know that the cover would be a man himself. The theme of the last issue of the magazine is dedicated to the staff who have made the magazine what it is over the years. You have seen the magazine. They were touched inside, and the man stopped running. He bravely took the woman's hand.